get a sense of how the thing is going to bounce before the thing makes that bounce.
I know they've been trying this whole new 0.5, move the ball, cut around, cut here and there, slash, get to the rim, get in the paint, kick it out. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked, and it's only been 4 games. And I'll give them credit. You give them some time, but.
Welcome to Pensar Basketball. Give a like for that. Give a like for that video intro. I was up all night making this one. All right. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to y'all about 24, 94, 50. What am I talking about? Look, there's a lot of different ways we can talk about basketball. Let me make myself a little bit big for a second here. There's a lot of different ways that we can talk about basketball. There's certainly the, eye test approach. There's certainly the numbers approach, the 4-factor model. We can talk about it like scouts. We can talk about it like analysts. We can do, we could do it a lot of different ways, but I want to talk about it from the most simple to understand, but also one of the more advanced ways that I can think about talking about it. It's a way in which I don't think I've seen somebody else talk about it. So I want to introduce something original to the lexicon of basketball. And it floats very well into the Scottie Barnes video that I'm already working on. So I wanted to introduce this. So what is 24, 94, 50? Straight up, 3 of the most important numbers in basketball. Let's talk about it. Well, here we go. 24 is the number of seconds on the shot clock. 94 is 94 feet vertically, the basketball court, and 50 is the horizontal space on the basketball court, right? So every single team is navigating with these 3 numbers in mind. You can introduce other numbers, 5, which is the number of players on the court, etc. But these are the 3 most fundamental numbers when we're talking about time and space in basketball. Okay. So the reason that I use this image is because by the end of this video, which will hopefully not be overly long, I'm going to show you why certain players, specifically superstars, are as effective as they are. Now, if you go back and really just look at these pictures, and I'm not kidding, look at the amount of gravity that a player like Kobe Bryant has when he goes into the paint or when he goes into the floater range, or if you all go back and watch that 81-point game, disaster that he did, that was a message to the league. Don't guard me like this. Y'all remember 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. Sam Mitchell's entire strategy going into that game was, we're not going to double him. Well, that's what happened. Yeah, 81 points if you don't double Kobe Bryant. So Kobe's effectiveness as a scorer came down to the fact that he was an assassin from everywhere. He did not have weak spots on the court. Sure, he didn't have a dominant zone like Michael Jordan and LeBron James in the paint. He didn't have a dominant zone behind the 3-point arc like Steph Curry, but he was a better 3-point shooter than LeBron, at least in his prime. He was a better 3-point shooter than Michael, and he was a much better post player than a lot of guards of his era like Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, etc. So he was really just slightly above average everywhere, and that in itself created massive amounts of gravity because there was no way to push him left or right and make him less effective. It's the same thing with a guy like Shaquille O'Neal. If you think about it, every single time Shaq caught the ball, they had to throw 2 defenders. So when we're talking about superstars, what I want you to imagine is that the floor starts to sink when they get into dominant zones. And as the floor starts to sink, suddenly every single player not on their team starts to slowly move towards them. This is also going to impact your cutting, screening angles, and all that stuff. So, when we talk about a Nikola Jokic, how is he exploiting this? Well, he's a gifted passer. All great players are good playmakers. That's really what it comes down to. We can talk about scorers and we can talk about all this other stuff, but really, Nikola Jokic is getting double teamed, triple teamed, and quadruple teamed because he's a great scorer. He is a very effective scorer. Do you know that Nikola Jokic had a 70% true shooting percentage the year they won the championship? Last year was 65%. Both numbers are higher than Shaquille O'Neal's career average. So my point is, you don't get those passing angles that he has. The passing angles that Nikola Jokic is able to exploit, the passing angles that Magic Johnson's able to exploit, it's not enough to just say they're great passers because they're great scorers that they become great passers, and that's the gravity of the scoring that creates the passing angles. And so when we talk about a non-superstar playing or masquerading as a star, like a Jordan Poole, a Kyle Kuzma, right? Or to a lesser degree, of course, a Pascal Siakam, a Julius Randle. When a player like that goes into their bag and starts cooking one-on-one, there is a massive gap in terms of how the defense is reacting to them versus how the defense would react if a Kevin Durant managed to get open. So last night on Pensar Basketball Instagram, shout out to Pensar Basketball Instagram, I started to list out a variety of hosts, and I just want to read them out here. And by the end of this, you're gonna understand. Then we're gonna look at a little bit of film and clips, and we're gonna show this in real time. Okay, so elite scorers get easy shots and generate easier shots for their teammates. This is simple to understand. There's also the fear factor of what happens to the defense when a great scorer gets the ball. This doesn't happen when Kyle Kuzma and Pascal Siakam get the ball. There's levels to this. So I apologize. I'm going to get a bit of sore throat this morning. So I'm just pulling through this. Okay. So I want to make it clear. We often try to quantify basketball as much as we can. I don't think we qualify basketball nearly as well as we should. So the fear factor of what happens when a Shaquille O'Neal grabs the ball 6 feet from the basket, that's panic. Panic makes people do stupid things like ignore their matchups, abandon their team strategy, commit fouls, commit turnovers. When a really dominant defender like a Michael Jordan, it starts picking you up full court and hounding you with the basketball, you become way more likely to commit the turnover. I'm gonna give you another example. What about the physical wear and tear of guarding a really physical player? Where in the analytics do I see the physical toll of guarding Kawhi Leonard for 40 minutes? Think about the greatest players of all time and find me one who wasn't very strong. Even Steph Curry right now is very strong for a guard if you consider him a top 10 player. There is a physical force and a beating that you take playing against any great player. LeBron James, this is not for kids, okay? Michael Jordan, one of the most physical guards in NBA history. Kareem, not easy. Wilt, not easy. Hakeem, not easy. None of these guys are easy on your body. They wear you down throughout the game. Not only are they intelligent, not only are they physically and athletically gifted, they're also very strong. So you must be a threat from everywhere. As a good scorer and a passer, if I know that you can't pass with your left hand or you can't finish going right, you can't score with your back to the basket, can't do it off the bounce, suddenly all those gaps that you think that you're creating are shrinking. And the gaps you create as a scorer add value to the offensive efficiency for yourself and your team. This is what made Kobe such a threat, even if you argue against the elite efficiency. So again, when you create space, and I'll show that in an example. These are two player types. Let me give you the two player types. Player type 1 is the big who can run, like who can sprint. I'm not talking a big who is agile. I'm saying the big who does wind sprints up and down the court and just outpaces other bigs. I'm not talking a big who's fast for a big. I'm talking a big who's fast for the NBA. That includes guys like Pascal Siakam, Chris Bosh earlier on, Amari Stoudemire. What kind of pressure does a downhill athlete who runs and catches the ball well, double so if they can pass, triple so if they can pull up above the break like Chris Bosh could, what kind of pressure does that player put on the middle of the floor and the basket? This is the most efficient part of, when we talk about the most efficient zones on a basketball court, it's the paint, it's the rim, it's the 5-6 feet around the rim. That's the place that no defense ever wants to surrender. Apart from that, it's the corners. And then apart from that, it's above the break. These are the three places that defenses are trying to slow down. They're willing to live with mid-range. But when you have a big, like an Ulrich Shamshay that we've seen many times in Summer League, he just charges to the basket. When you have that player, that creates a massive gravitational pull in the middle of the floor that sinks the floor. And as you sink the floor in the middle, you expand the corners. Give me a W if you understand what I mean. If you can sink the floor in the middle like a Shaquille O'Neal, you elevate the corners relative to the middle. A player like a Derek Fisher is infinitely more open when you have dominant players. When we talk about Team USA and everything, I don't think people understand what a cheat code Kevin Durant is when you put 4 good players around him. That's the whole point. That's why he wanted to go to Golden State, because it's a testing of a basketball hypothesis. He's a basketball nerd. But KD is like the biggest basketball nerd. He watches podcasts. He's checked out this stuff. Like, he's checked out other channels. Like, he is a basketball junkie. Like, I think he thinks about basketball more than any person on earth. And it's just a hypothesis that he probably had in his head of, God damn it, this warrior spacing would make me the best player in the league. And he wasn't wrong. Another example of a big who runs the floor and can pass and can sort of shoot is Draymond Green. Now, Draymond is sort of the point guard in Golden State. And people who don't understand basketball seem to think that he's more of a power forward center, but he's really the point guard in Golden State. And his role as such, because he is physical enough to take a point guard into the post, is that he is going to push the pace, and he is a massive creator of space, not only as a rebounder, not only as a defender, right? Because when we talk about time and space, well, if you can close gaps on defense in terms of time, you can also, and you can sprint it up the court the way that he just races it up the court, and you can spray those passes out super accurate. You're cutting the time, right? When you're a very accurate passer, think about it. When you're an accurate passer, let's say I'm a shit passer and you're on my team and you're in the corner and you think you're open because the closest defender is 8 feet away. Well, now we're just navigating time and space, aren't we? We have 15 feet between us. I have the basketball. There's 9 seconds left on the shot clock. Your closest defender is 8 feet away. But let's say I throw you a pass and it's a slow pass. It's not a whoop pass. It's not Jokic. It's not Arvydas Sabonis. It's not Magic Johnson. It's not that Scottie Barnes whip pass, right? He doesn't manipulate it at all. He projects the pass. Oh, now I project the pass because I'm a dummy, right? Y'all often wonder why some of the greatest passers ever manipulate the defense a little bit before they throw the pass. They're all just creating time and space. That's all this is, right? Captain Cameraman, this stream title is cringe, my man. Cool. I don't care. Let's go. Let's keep going. We ignore the haters. We ignore the haters. We're above the haters. Okay. So when we talk about that situation, let's say I change one variable. I project the pass before. Now your defender closes the gap before I throw the pass. 8 feet turns to 6 feet. Suddenly you're not open. What if I throw the pass, but it's just a little bit outside your shooting pocket, and now you have to kind of gather the basketball, right? You got to gather the basketball a little bit. Your gap is closed. The time and space that we were trying to manipulate as a team is now gone. Now you have to reset the offense, swing back to the top, and now precious 7 seconds have passed because I didn't throw a pass accurately. You want to talk about guys as passers. You want to say, oh, 18, he averages 6 assists, 8 assists, 10 assists. I don't care. How like, what is the quality of shots you're generating? Are you generating open looks? Number one, are you generating looks in places that I want looks to be generated from? I don't give a shit if you're a terrible playmaker, you hold the ball and then you play hot potato with it with 2 seconds to go and people bail you out all game. I mean, there's a lot of players like that that rack up 6, 7 assists and people think they're good passers. They're not. There's a difference between great passers. My point is, an archetype that is successful for gravity on the basketball court is a big who can run. Pascal Siakam is a great example. Amari Stoudemire, as I mentioned, Chris Bosh, Ulrich Shamshay as a very abstract rookie example, the 57th overall pick for the Toronto Raptors. But that's a player on our team. Christian Koloko is also really good at running the floor. I think Ulrich is on another level personally, but the motor, the commitment to do this, there's a lot of bigs out there that don't run the floor well. Ironically, Nikola Jokic is one of them. But because he's basically the point guard in Denver, it doesn't matter too much. Okay, the second player type that really helps gravity is movement shooters. When I say movement shooters, I'm talking about guys like Jacoby Walter and Grady Dick, but I'm also talking about guys like Kevin Huerter, right? Movement shooters create gravity as they move around the basketball court, which is pretty cool, right? Because they are a threat to score from different places. They're coming off pin downs, they're coming off staggers, they're coming off screens, and every single time their man loses them, they get gravity. So they're going to be pretty much dependent on the quality of screeners that they're playing with, the quality of offense, and ultimately the quality of primary initiator. So if you put movement shooters next to a prime Michael Jordan and you try to run motion flex offense, like that can help. That could be very, very dominant, right? You take a movement shooter like a JJ Redick and you put him next to any great player, he's going to be elevating them and they're definitely going to be elevating him. This is a very good thing to have on the court. It doesn't quite have the gravity of a superstar, of course, right? But losing a movement shooter, especially a dead eye, 40% above the break, 40% from the corner type of diverse 3-point shooter, like a Ray Allen, losing a guy like that when he's the third or fourth option, right? Like in Miami, that Ray Allen, losing that guy is massive scramble. Now, what happens when there's a scramble is you disrupt time and space because now you have two defenders who've clearly miscommunicated a coverage. Now they're both confused. And that moment gap is all it took for the big to slip back door, for one of their guys to get open. And now it's create the advantage, milk the advantage, exercise, and capitalize on the advantage. So when we're talking about bad offenses like the Washington Wizards, the Detroit Pistons, is because no one is able to create the advantage. Cade doesn't burst fast enough to get past this man. He's not a good enough shooter to really threaten anything. When he catches a ball, I want to say, 26 feet, 27 feet when he's initiating, right? He didn't have the diversity of angles. He doesn't have the quality of players around him to extend those gaps, make them open. That's why people really do overrate sometimes players who play in great systems like Boston, where everyone's getting overrated in Boston. I'm not throwing shade at any of those players. Derek White's awesome. Jaylen Brown's awesome. Jason Tatum's awesome. But man, they are playing with maximum space. Joe Mazzulla is a mastermind. He has managed to win a championship without a top 5 player, and he's one of few coaches in NBA history to do that. And he's largely doing it by really messing up the time and space argument here. Another team that did it was the Detroit Pistons. They did it defensively. They messed up time and space defensively. Look at Tayshaun Prince. Look at, Chauncey Billups, Rasheed Wallace. Like, that just messes up your entire space because they don't have any players that are like, oh my God, they're stuck on an island, right? Rasheed Wallace, and again, it's not like the Detroit Pistons 04 were not beatable. They were, of course, beatable. If they had to face the 17 Warriors, they'd be cooked. They'd be toast. A great shooting team would have beat that team. They were very, very heavily dependent on facing teams that were going to drive against them because they had Big Ben and Rasheed Wallace in there. But if you could stretch them out, they were too old to stop the Golden State Warriors. They would have lost to a really great jump shooting team. Anyways, movement shooters are a cheat code, and there's a reason why, especially guys who can play make and score off the dribble, they are like one of the most valuable archetypes. Now we start talking about generational archetypes, and that is where you get Steph Curry and Dame Lillard. And the point I want to emphasize here is deep movement shooters. We're talking about guys who can catch and pull from 32, 33, 34 feet effectively, not 1 out of 4, not 25% three-point shooting. I'm talking Steph Curry is deadly from 36 feet. Deadly. If you leave him open, he will score 80 points from that range. He is not someone that you can ignore at that point. That means your defensive pickup point is already very stressed. The angle extends up for Steph. Now you add Clay to that as the movement shooter. So Clay is not this. Clay is the most elevated version of the previous movement shooter I talked about. Draymond is the big who runs, right? Now you talk about 3 of the most impressive archetypes for movement and space, and that is the Warriors dynasty in a nutshell. Okay? What happens when a player can stress the defense out at 32 feet? When you add, because the three-point line is about 25 feet, you make it 32 feet, 33 feet, suddenly you are adding chunks of real estate. What happens to all those angles? Passing angles expand. The distance of the pass becomes bigger, which means the distance that the defense has to now cover is much bigger as well. People still have 2 feet. They still have 2 hands. This is going to make recovery damn near impossible. It's going to make a player like an Andre Iguodala or a Sean Livingston very effective. In fact, if you want my honest opinion, this is one of the things that made Andrew Wiggins so goddamn effective, because he is a absolutely dominant athlete. If you could put a Vince Carter in his prime on the 18, 19 Warriors, that would be a fucking cheat code, because Vince is the player that they didn't have. Vince Carter, LeBron James, that's the player they didn't have until they sort of did with Kevin Durant. But you get what I'm saying. When you can add those 3 ingredients of a movement shooter, a deep movement shooter, and the big who runs, you are creating the most massive angles for yourself. And when you can play fast, which the Warriors do, 0.5 basketball, everything is quick, you are now expanding the advantage you've already created with your personnel. You're playing the right way. Now you take one element of this out, which is the Clay, the movement shooter, the second movement shooter. Suddenly it's no longer as hard to guard. And now you start to hone in on the fact that Steph Curry can't create as well off the bounce as a Kobe Bryant or a typical lead scorer, right? You start to hone in on the fact that his finishing percentages are not nearly as dominant as some of the best bigs in the league, or, some of the previously thought of like most dominant scorers. Like Steph Curry at his peak without the Warrior system is not Kawhi Leonard good. He's not as good defensively. He's probably not even as good offensively. But you put him in that system, and I'm not saying Steph's a system player. He would have thrived anywhere, but this was the maximum outcome. And every player can be optimized. Every player has a maximum outcome. This was Steph's maximum outcome. Now I want to talk about the most impressive and the most important archetype, which is the jumbo creator. That's your LeBron. That's your Luka. I could say that's also your Michael Jordan. But that is the MVP archetype. The best version of this is always the best player in the world. Magic Johnson, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic. A player who can add the dimension that is missing from this equation, which is height. Now, everything Steph Curry is doing right now, he's doing at 6'3". Everything Allen Iverson did, he did at 6'1", 6 foot. That's 6'1". He was 5'11". Everything those guys did as undersized guys becomes elevated if you make them bigger. If Steph Curry was 6'7", Steph Curry might be the greatest player of all time. If Kobe Bryant could take his skill set at 6'6" and expand it to 6'9", 6'10", and keep everything else, but just add those 4 inches, now we are talking about a better passer, a better scorer, a better finisher. Everything becomes more elevated. Everything becomes more elevated. Why? Because it is the deviation from the average. Once you become bigger, you become more of a problem in terms of matchups, but your angle of viewing becomes different. It becomes harder to disrupt your viewing angles. When you're small, you're basically running through guys. You have to create so much of your space through quickness. That's why I was so against the idea of bringing Fred VanVleet back, because he didn't have the burst to begin with. There's craft will only bring you so far. Fred VanVleet is 2 years away from the biggest fall off of any player you probably ever seen. Okay, he's still good, but one injury, it's over. You saw it. You saw it as a Raptor fan. You saw it when he got compromised a little bit with the health. It was over because the fractions, the margins on which undersized players win a possession is already so narrow that even one step and you're done. It's the same thing with Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson didn't forget how to play basketball. Allen Iverson didn't stop competing. Allen Iverson, frankly, lost the step. And then he lost another step. He lost the step before he went to Denver. Then he lost the second step. Bro, the time he lost the third step, he was cooked. He was not an NBA player anymore. And at least he was not an NBA star anymore. So jumbo creators have the size and dexterity in the viewing angles because everything they do is just bigger. Especially if that jumbo creator is also strong. And Michael Jordan was hella strong. Magic Johnson, hella strong. Kawhi Leonard's hella strong. Luka is goddamn, he's built like an ox. And LeBron James is as generational as it comes when it comes to wing prospects. Another jumbo creator is Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen may not have been the most elite version of a superstar, but Scottie Pippen finished top 5 in MVP voting, I think 3 times in his career. He was also a good example of a jumbo creator. This is the most valuable archetype. Bar none, this is by far the most valuable archetype. If you can ask any GM, what player do you want to build around? This is the easiest player to build around. They're the most interesting player to build around as well, because the number of different pieces you can put around them is very important, right? You could argue that Draymond Green has elements of jumbo creator as well. He's about 6'5", 6'6", could really pass. But that's definitely not who I'm talking about. I'm talking more in the Luka and LeBron tier. And this is where I say that the advantages that a Scottie Barnes could create are greater than the advantages anyone could create. Because what we haven't talked about enough in basketball, in terms of the basketball lexicon, right, is versatility. How much does versatility change the space-time equation? When I know that Scottie Barnes can pick up a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I know he can guard 5 positions, and he can, he absolutely can. You have many clips. He shut down Steph Curry last year. The worst game of Steph's entire prime was against Scottie Barnes. Yeah, there's certain types of players he can't guard, but I say Scottie Barnes can guard 90% of the players in this league very effectively. And I would say that 90% of this league cannot guard Scottie Barnes one-on-one. You know what that creates? That creates major space and time problems. Because if Scottie Barnes catches Chris Paul 10 feet from the basket, Scottie Barnes going to the post and you have to send a double team. If Scottie Barnes catches Brook Lopez 22 feet from the basket, that's a problem too. Right now, the issue is, how does he navigate the space? We talked about it yesterday. His ball skills have to get a lot better. His shooting has to get a lot better. But we will absolutely look at some film to show y'all why I'm saying this and why defenses do not respect Scottie Barnes right now. So the analytics revolution, numbers are great. Better numbers are better. Quantifying what we see on the court helps push development and evolution in better directions. This is what Masai Ujiri said, right? is helping them make better decisions. Analytics should help you make better decisions. An example, 7 seconds or less Suns, right? I remember, less than 20 years ago, we were talking about that team being one of the worst defensive teams of all time. They really weren't that bad defensively. No one's arguing they're great. But people just looked at, oh my God, they gave up 112 points. They gave up 115 points. My God, they're a terrible defensive team. But that's not how it works when you start scaling for possessions, which is what we started to do. We started to think about basketball in terms of possessions, per 75, per 100. And then you start to frame a better balance. An understanding of analytics makes smart basketball people into super smart basketball people. Firmly believe this. If you could teach Darko Rajakovic about, a guy who has studied this game better than 99.999999999% of the world, if you could make him an analytics junkie, you will make him a superpower, like a basketball superpower. He already gets a lot about the analytics. I gathered that. But if you could make him an analytics expert, he would be able to take everything that he is thinking and he'd be able to put a number on it. That's the beauty of analytics. But let's be clear, it does not make a basketball casual into a basketball supercomputer. You still have to understand what you're measuring. And without a reference point, how can you even begin to determine the gaps in what you're saying? So an example, Andre Drummond in 2018, 2019 had a PER, good job, John Hollinger, of 23.4. LeBron last year was 23.7. Granted, LeBron for most of his career has been close to 30. But if PER is defined as an average 15.0 is the average player, then Andre Drummond is as far removed from the average player as LeBron James was last year. Drummond in 18-19 wasn't that good. So we have to look at this number and just say, there's probably something wrong with this number. And there is. Historically, PR has always favored stat stuffing, rebounding centers. It over prioritizes rebounding. And if you don't understand basketball and you don't understand stats, then you can't simply look at that number and say, my guy's better than your guy. Well, then what about the old school people who are just like, well, weren't we better off just talking about points per game and rebounds per game? Well, imagine this. Jerry Stackhouse averaged 29.8 points per game in 2000, 2001. That was more that year than Vince Carter. That was more than Allen. I think that was more than Allen Iverson. No, I don't know if it was more than Allen Iverson, but it was definitely more than Kobe Bean Bryant. Was he better than Kobe? Was he better than Vince? No, they were much better. They were much better than him. He was inefficient. He was a chucker. Okay. No offense, Jerry Stackhouse. Man, the guy never saw a shot he didn't want. So then what good is measuring with one or the other? We need all. We need the eye test. We need to be able to say this guy is forcing shots. This guy's not making his teammates better. He's not creating enough space for his team. He's not, he's a negative spacer, etc. We also need the numbers. We also need the analytics. And sometimes people get a little bit frustrated if you can't make it simple. But basketball is not that simple. It is simple in terms of what I'm saying here. It's about space and time. But when you start talking about how to discuss it, it can become quite complicated, right? And we break everything down to a single variable, it gets pretty simple. It is space and time. It is really space and time, which eventually comes to force. So let's talk about space and time. Jokic shrinks time. You can see that, right? Be real. You can see that. When he catches the ball in the post and without even having to look around, he is able to release that ball in a millisecond, 10 milliseconds, a quarter of a second, and accurately find Jamal Murray open. Has he shrunk in time or has he expanded time, right? When he sucks in 2 to 3 defenders, we're talking about space. But when we talk about manipulation of time, Steve Nash getting the ball up the court, Tyrese Halliburton, like one of the quickest full court passers I think I've ever seen in my lifetime, Tyrese Halliburton. Arvydas Sabonis was another one example of a great quick decision maker. So when we're whipping passes really far, very accurately past the defense, not committing turnovers, and they're accurate, and we're processing those passes because we map the court so well, like a Scottie Barnes, we're shrinking time. But the whole point of shrinking time is that you don't want to be up against the shot clock towards the end because you're adding a sixth defender to the court for the other team. If I know you have 2 seconds to hit a shot, well, now suddenly you are way more predictable. Way more predictable. I know there's things you cannot do in 2 seconds. I know there's things you're going to have to do in 2 seconds. Now I can press up on you. Another way to shrink time is through just being physically faster up the court. And that's where you get your elite run jump athletes like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? Or an Allen Iverson. I think about guarding an Allen Iverson, a nightmare as it was. He's quicker to his spots than you. That's as fast as I can, that's as well as I can put it. Allen Iverson will beat you to his spot better than you can beat him to his spot. That's it. And if you cheat, he's going past you. You reach, I teach. You reach, I teach. Go, boom, to the basket. And he's a good finisher. And he gets to the line. And he's a little guy, so he bounces around a lot, and refs reward that. That's the cheat code of Allen Iverson. This is really simplifying basketball. So when a player like a Bosch or a Siakam takes 2 seconds to gather on the catch, give me a W if you remember, Chris Bosch surveying the court before he wanted to make his move, right? This kills your offense. 0.5 basketball is predicated on offense being faster than the defense. This is a very core fact of all sports, okay? The first person to the desired spot wins the spot. If you have the faster team in hockey, the faster team in baseball, the faster team in any sport, you're going to probably have an advantage. Time and speed are related. What about space? That's the other side of this, right? Take an extreme example. A great defender covers vertical space. Hakeem Olajuwon, right? He's faster tracking the ball than pretty much any player I've seen. Right? What about horizontal space? Like Michael Jordan. He can cover more space with his lateral quickness and his wingspan than almost any defender I've ever seen in my life, including LeBron. Possibly Kawhi Leonard is there as well, but Jordan was just faster. Transition, he could defend. He could defend at the rim. Jordan was an insane defender. Pippen was an insane defender. But Jordan was a very unique defender in the sense that you couldn't shake him off of you. The pressure that he could apply to you was insanity. That's why he got so many steals. So what are we really talking about? We're talking about space. When you rise up above the defense and try to lay up, and some giant comes out of nowhere and just swats it away, you thought you had space. He took it away. That's it. When you try to shake, and the defender doesn't go away, you're trying to create space to get to your spot. And the defender, he's cutting out space. He can take away that space because he has the length, the quickness, the discipline, the stamina to take it away. On offense, the best players generate the maximum space. Shaquille O'Neal generates space, right? Take the opposite example, a player who does not generate space right now, and that's Ben Simmons. Right now, Ben Simmons has lost the athleticism and the burst and all that stuff that he had in 2018, 2019. They're trying to use him as a big now. He doesn't have a lot of gravity, can't set screens without fouling. Ben Simmons is a useless basketball player right now. He's pretty bad. He's not a top 100 basketball player right now. He used to be a top 15 basketball player. That's a big fall off, right? But when Ben Simmons catches the basketball 24 feet from the basket and does not immediately move it off, the floor starts to shrink for his team. And it starts to expand in favor of the defense. It's really simple. Because when Ben Simmons catches the ball, and this is what drove people crazy about Scottie Barnes, when teams would play extreme drop and he would just stand there and he wouldn't punish it. He wouldn't drive into it. He wouldn't take the shot. He said, I won't take trick shots. Now, I stood there and defended that. I wouldn't defend that today. I wouldn't defend him today for doing that. I would say that's a mistake. And I think he realizes it now too, because he doesn't pass up those shots anymore. But back then I thought, defend my guy. Everyone's ripping him for this, but I was wrong. No. You have to take the shot. If you're open, you have to take it. You're not a non-shooter. You're 28%, 29% three-point shooter. You got to take the shot. Right? Okay. Negative spacers make screens harder for the offense. It's just true. When you are able to ignore a player on offense as the defender, if I'm able to ignore you offensively, right? I am absolutely going to be able to pay more attention to my guy. I'm also going to be able to do a better job navigating screens because I'm not off balance. The angles are smaller. When I talk about maximum space like the Warriors dynasty, right? I'm really talking about extending all those angles out to make those screens and cuts better. The offense is always controlling and the defense is always reacting, right? You cannot react to something that hasn't happened. You can only predict. So when an Andre Iguodala breaks free from the corner, it helps that the closest defender so when he breaks past this guy, let's say he does a V cut, just loses his guy, or he cuts back door. Now his defender is on his hip trailing him, right? It helps that the closest defender to Iguodala is 18 feet and not 8 feet, because 8 feet, he will recover. He will offer help, and you have to reset your offense. 18 feet, it's an open dunk. That's why when the Boston Celtics lose a game, you will always see Joe Mazzulla saying, our spacing was bad. It's like, bro, you lost the game on defense. Our spacing was bad. You didn't hit shots. Our spacing was bad. It always comes back to spacing with Joe Mazzulla. He's on to something. He's not wrong. Okay. Is Jakob Poeltl a non-spacer? Kind of, but not really. Because Jakob Poeltl, albeit cannot shoot, can attack a gap. He can attack. He can put the ball on the floor. He's an efficient paint finisher. He's a dominant screener, and he is a really good offensive rebounder, good passer. All of these things help space. So while he is costing you in terms of spacing on one side, I don't want to hear any more talk about Jakob Poeltl is terrible for your spacing on the other side, because he's not terrible for your spacing. He's not beneficial to your spacing, but he does enough good things that he is absolutely capable of helping your spacing. He's active as hell. He is very smart. He understands screening angles very well. He knows how to peel off his guy. He definitely can seal his guy inside. He can hunt on a mismatch. If he gets a small on him, he's going up with it. I think it's yeah. I think it's important. Okay. There is, of course, also vertical spacing. Mafio saying correct, and that's where the Wembanyama effect comes in, right? Wembanyama, Steph Curry extended the court vertically in terms of the horizontal vertical axis. Like Steph Curry brought us up to 32, 33 feet. Victor Wembanyama brought us up to 14 feet up, right? So now you're talking about the third plane. So we just been talking 2D. Now we talk 3D basketball with Victor Wembanyama, and the fact that he is able to cover horizontal space so well, like he's able to laterally move as well as he is, y'all better hope Victor Wembanyama doesn't become as good as he is going to become, or I think he's going to become. Because if he becomes what I think he's going to become, there's no championships for anybody until he retires. It is impossible to stop. Impossible. His measurements alone make it a physics nightmare to try and score on that team. It's just not like you have to get him in foul trouble. Like it's not something that you can stop as I think it will go, right? Now, obviously, we saw the Paris Olympics, we saw France, we saw Wemby, kind of floating in and out. We saw him falling all over himself. We saw him missing shots. If he doesn't help himself as a shooter, at the very least, he will still be a generational prospect defensively who can shut down the paint. You'll have to find ways around it. Obviously, he needs to get stronger, more coordinated, and a better, he needs to fix his, stuff. But I think this kid works way too hard to be bad. He's going to be great. Okay. Blend it all together, the space time, and that's what makes both of these guys so damn elite. That's Michael and Michael Jordan and LeBron James. It's their finishing ability, their ability to effectively and quickly move through large chunks of basketball real estate, and their ability to punish mistakes as playmakers. I want you to think about who Michael Jordan was. If you have a memory of watching him, or if you are a younger person and you just happen to watch highlights, think about how fast he is. Think about how strong he is. Think about how dynamic he is, and then think about how aggressive he is. Michael Jordan is a bullet. Michael Jordan is a bullet charging to the rim, especially prior to 1990, charging to the rim at every opportunity. He is a relentless rim attacker. He is also an incredible vertical athlete where he can jump right over your big and stuff it on him. He's going to the line or he's going into the hoop. Okay. And if you manage to sag off a little bit, he's pulling up for that jumper. He does not miss very often. He's a very efficient player. I think he was like 60% true shooting plus almost every single year of his career. Michael Jordan is a space and time nightmare because he is faster and quicker and just bigger and stronger, and he is punishing you on every mistake. Okay. LeBron is a locomotive going right down the middle. His whipping passes left, right, and center, right? You imagine what could have happened. Just imagine what could have happened if either of these guys could really shoot when they were still at their peak athletically. My God. That's why Jokic has 3 MVPs, despite the fact that he's not very athletic. He's not he's not 7'2". Jokic is max 6'11", right? That's why Luka will win one, right? He manipulates time and space. Why Giannis won MVPs without a jumper. Giannis's jumper is fugly. Okay, it's a very ugly shot. It's why Shaq won an MVP without being able to make free throws. If you want to see basketball differently, it's this picture on the right, right? It's that picture. Every great player bends the floor in their favor. Okay? And every terrible player bends it away from their favor. That's all it is. So when you imagine basketball from here on out, just try to do this one thing. Kawhi Leonard catches the ball in the pinch post. He turns around and starts to make his move. As this is happening, the floor is sinking around him. Okay. It's just, think of it as a red dot. And the longer he has the basketball and the longer he's motioning into his shot, the more the floor is sinking around him. And the more the defense is paying attention to him. So let's take an example. Let's look at some clips here, because there are some clips to look at. And then I'll show you motion gone amok. Okay. So this is against the San Antonio Spurs, the aforementioned Victor Wembanyama. Hang on one second. Let me just drink some coffee here. Quickly get to a super chat. Noble Venom, thank you for the super chat, as always, my guy. You mentioned KD being a basketball junkie. I know Scottie loves basketball, especially playing it, but he himself has said he didn't watch much NBA growing up. Does this concern you? Well, no. He has watched a lot of NBA, but I completely understand what you're saying. Do I wish Scottie was more of a basketball junkie? Yeah, sure. It wouldn't hurt. Chris Paul's a basketball junkie too. KD's a basketball junkie. LeBron's a basketball junkie. Kyle Lowry's a basketball junkie. These guys have games on all the time. I don't hold it against someone for not being a basketball junkie, though. I bet you Michael Jordan does not watch the NBA right now very much either. Some people just love playing. Scottie just loves playing. Every single time like he's in a city, he's just playing basketball. He just likes to play basketball. I wish he would watch more basketball, though. Yeah, for sure. He doesn't study the game like some of these guys. If and when he does, it's over for the league. You know what? I don't know Scottie well enough at all to say whether he studies the game or he doesn't. But yes, the second Scottie decides to put in the Kobe work of really, really, really breaking down the analytics and breaking down the minutia and going game by game, and if he does that, because I know Brian does that. I know Brian will break film down with him. I think that's the most important part of having Darko here, because Darko will do that with him, and Darko will force him to do that. Like, Darko is the type of person. Look, habits are everything in life. Okay, you can get used to anything. You can get used to smoking. You shouldn't. You can get used to drinking water 8 times a day. You can get used to sleeping at the right time. Habits are, it's a function of repetition, right? If nobody taught him at a young level, at a youth level, to break down his game film or to become obsessed with that element of the game, and I don't know that he's not. I can only guess. Well, maybe someone can teach him now. He's still very young. His brain is expanding for the next 2 years. I mean, I guarantee you, you're going to see a different Scottie Barnes this year. I'll bet my life on it. Okay. Now here's Scottie. And just to put this out there, you can never be this good at basketball without doing a lot of work. Like, it's impossible for someone to be this good. Like, there's plenty of guys that are more athletic than him, bigger than him, that failed at this level. Plenty. Okay. He's an all-star at 23. I think it's pretty crazy. I think it's pretty crazy for us to be, he's an all-star at what, 22? He was an all-star at 22 years old, man. To me, Scottie plays so much on his raw instincts. Bro, it's not all raw instincts. I mean, yeah, that's a part of it. And you can say, damn, if this is raw instincts, can you imagine what an obsessive, film study Kyle Lowry version of him would be? But that's also why you need proper vets. I mean, he had Fred VanVleet, he had all these guys, but he didn't have Kyle Lowry, he didn't have Marc Gasol, he didn't have Serge Ibaka, he didn't have the guys who had like the 15-year careers that are Hall of Famers, et cetera. He didn't have those. So saying you can tell on defense he doesn't study film as much as he could. He's still a great player on his way to stardom. I don't know if you can tell that he doesn't study film as much as he should, but I'll tell you one thing. Him getting injured, I called it out when he got injured that it was a blessing in disguise. It forced him to stop playing. It forced him to continue to participate without playing. And then he had to learn different ways to help his team. So that meant going up to a guy and conveying the scouting report to him. That meant cheering a team on from the bench. Scottie Barnes has been on the bench in his whole life. He's not a bench player. I mean, he came off the bench for Florida State. That's his choice, right? He wanted to do that. But that's not like, he's not a bench player. He's not a top 5 recruit most of his life. This is not a player. Like, look, every single player has that development to go. It's not like, can we be real about one thing? Most players in NBA history, right, were in college or 1 year removed from college, the same year that Scottie became an all-star. So, you grow at different stages. If he's not obsessed with film when he's 26, that's a different story. But being 21 and not being obsessed with film, I mean, I'm sorry. There are a lot of 21-year-olds who are not obsessed with this stuff. I guarantee you, Thaddeus Young, for as wise as he is today, was not as obsessed with breaking down his game film as he was when he's 30 than he was when he was 20. There's a natural growth that happens with people. Anyways, let's go to this clip. Now, look at the defender go under. This screen is ineffective because they didn't have to trail him. They are comfortable losing Scottie, and this is last year. This is not the year before or the year before. He'd already shown that he was willing to pull and he was willing to shoot at this point. This is, I think, 7 games or 8 games into the season. He was shooting 40%. And they're letting him do this. Look at how open he is. They would never do this with Steph. They wouldn't even do this with LeBron. So they're doing this with Scottie. And they're just willing to, and kudos to OG for trying to rescreen and trying to bump the shoulder a little bit. This is a wide open shot. And it goes in. Kudos on that. But that is the lack of space and the lack of gravity that Scottie has as a shooter right now. Now, watch Scottie in the middle of the court. Jakob Poeltl, top, right? Just a little bit of denial. Okay. Dennis Schroeder is going to try to haplessly set a screen there, right? Bump the defender, get Scottie a little bit more space, right? Little handoff with Jakob, who's going to run another screen. And now Scottie is able to go downhill, exploit this matchup. They get the cross match on Jakob. Jakob seals over the top. Scottie's a great passer. There goes the viewing angle that I was talking about, because if Scottie Barnes is 6'3", that pass is not happening. You see my point? So the point here was, at no point did Scottie force the collapse. Right? Now, Here comes OG Anunoby. They force baseline. They know their help is going to come. They get the double from Victor Wembanyama. Boom. But look at how crowded the paint is, because Pascal Siakam, Scottie Barnes, and Dennis Schroeder are on the fucking court, and none of them are lights out shooters. None of them. They don't care. They could just gang up on the drive because they don't care. That's the point that I'm making. They don't care. Okay? All these guys are wide open, and they know that none of them are 40% three-point shooters. So none of them are going to actually punish them. Now, obviously, Scottie's going to make this. Pascal Siakam pointing out, and OG Anunoby finds Scottie Barnes. Where's the closest defender? They don't even bother to guard him. And he makes it. And that's 3 points on the box score. And obviously, as a major Scottie fan, I'm going to fanboy over the fact that he hit another three. Oh my God, look at how, but what happens when the defense won't lose you? People always ask that. They're like, oh, well, what happens when the defense starts guarding him from three? What if they start guarding him tight from three? Those percentages are going to dip. Yes, they will dip, as they would for anyone who gets guarded better. However, the minute they have to guard him from three, he's going to unlock Super Saiyan levels as a passer and as a driver. And that's what's missing right now. That's the gravity I'm talking about. He does not have gravity at all beyond the three-point line. Do you know what would happen to Steph Curry if he couldn't shoot threes? Like, what if there was a rule imposed on a game where it said Steph Curry's threes don't count for two, they don't count for three, they don't count for four, they count for zero, which means if he scores, it's a 0 point, okay? I want you to imagine how easy Steph Curry would be to guard. He would become a normal player. He's not a superstar anymore. He's not a star. He's not an all-star. He's just a normal guy. You take that one thing away, all those angles go away. If I don't have to worry about him at 30 feet, 25 feet, I don't have to worry about him at all from three. Oh my God. That means I just have to guard the corners. I just have to guard the paint with him. Oh my God. He becomes infinitely easier. Now, look at how open Scottie is here. Scottie at the top of the corner. This is going to be a dribble pull-up. So we were talking yesterday about pull-up game, right? Okay. Defender gets out. Hand up. Hands out. They're defending the drive right now. They don't even think he's going to shoot. They don't care if he's going to shoot. They're willing to live with this. Okay, Scottie. This is open. It's also, may I just say, a fluke. But it's open. It's wide open. Here's another example. Scottie catches the ball. Look at this handle. It is not at all manipulating the defense in the slightest. Okay? This is 2 years ago. Dude, Tyler Hero does not even put a hand up. Now, Tyler Hero is a notoriously terrible defender, and putting a hand up at this point makes no difference because he has a 6'4", 6'5" wingspan, and he's not even going to get close to Scottie's face given the distance that he had. But he was playing the drive. Everyone's playing the drive right now. Everyone is playing the drive. No one is playing the shot, and that's the fucking point. The scouting report is out. This guy cannot shoot. Now, I will say, but he shot 36%, 35%, 33%, whatever. They're just like, whatever. We don't care. Unless you shoot 38%, we're not guarding you from there because we're worried about your driving. Because the minute you drive, the minute he drives, it's over. Because the minute he drives, he forces the double. The minute he forces the double, he finds the open shot. It's so simple. It's space, time. Okay? So what I'm trying to show you is that Scottie Barnes has negative gravity right now as a shooter. Take a final example. Is the Boston Celtics, one of the best defensive teams in the league. Look at the gap that Jason Tatum is able to give to Scottie Barnes catching this basketball. Because he knows he's not gonna launch from 4 feet behind the line. That's why you got to pull some of these. You got to pull these. Now, 1 ways to dribble, 2 ways to dribble, 3 ways to dribble, and a pull-up. Why? I mean, he makes it, but my point is there's no space to attack the gap because the space is being taken away by your lack of ability to shoot. Do you understand what I'm saying? If Tatum plays you for the shot, now you can use your one dribble to get past them. You can jab and get past them. You can hezzy pull and get past them. You can manipulate your pace and get past them. But if he's not playing you for the shot and he's just willing to live 4 feet off of you, he's not playing you for the shot, it does not open up your drive. Your handle has to be borderline the greatest on earth at that size to be able to get past a guy who's not playing you for the shot. The shooting is everything. Okay. Now, granted, this is a game winner, and this is going to be traumatic for Raptor fans, but give me a W if you remember this. Give me a like on this video if you're watching this after you remember this. LeBron James, game winner against the Raptors. Best defender is sucked in on you. Therein lies number one, the space and time element of this. The fact that you are able to draw the other team's best defender and draw their best effort is very important, because if the best defender's on you, it's not on someone else. That's why superstars get paid max dollars. That's why they're worth every penny. And that's why, in my opinion, superstars like LeBron James have been underpaid every year. Every year. Every year he's been in the league, he's been underpaid massively. Even now, he's underpaid. Because look at what he does to the floor. Okay? Now, everyone's trying to stay home. But where's everyone's eyes? Where's everyone's focus? Number 0 is looking at him. OG's looking at him. Fred's looking at him. Pascal's looking at him. He hasn't even crossed half court yet. This is the superstar fear factor. This is the, oh my God, it's about to happen. Now, right now, Pascal Siakam is splitting his attention. Kyle Lowry is already in help. So he's already cheating. He's guarding nobody right now. He's already cheating because he knows OG is going to get beat. When you know your best defender is going to get beat off the dribble, bro, that is fear that you cannot even talk about here. J.R. Smith is wide open. Kyle Lowry does not care. Right now, Pascal Siakam has lost Kevin Love. I don't know how Pascal Siakam lost Kevin Love. Look, I need to see Pascal. Remember I said fear? Pascal Siakam just is paying so much attention to Pascal to OG's man, which is LeBron, that he literally is letting an all-star, an all-NBA player in Kevin Love just walk past him. And LeBron James hits one of the biggest shots of his career and ends the Raptors season. So what was the point of that other than excruciating pain for Raptor fans? It's to show you what kind of gravity a great player actually commands. Okay? Now, right now, once again, you have drawn the best defender on the other team, the best wing defender, which is Andre Iguodala, right? On LeBron James. There's no gap. There's no gap here. You see, Andre Iguodala is a 6'11" wingspan. He is in range. He is in range, and LeBron James is not even at the 3-point line right now. He is guarding LeBron like he can pull from 34 feet. And honestly, let's be real. LeBron probably not going to pull from 34 feet. But you know why he's guarding up on him? You know why he's not backing up off of him? Because you can't give LeBron the head start on the drive either, because his handle is too tight. That is the gap between LeBron and a Scottie Barnes. I'm not saying that's the only gap. That's one of the biggest gaps between Scottie and. So here comes the drive. Up, pull up, waits, hits. Doesn't matter. Hits it anyway. Now this example is another. When I say jumbo creator, this is the Luka from last year. Look at the fucking fear factor of Luka Doncic. Look at how this defender gets stuck on the screen, has to surrender the switch. He already knows he fucked up because Derek Lively just really, really did a great job there. And now Rudy Gobert is stuck on an island against Luka Doncic. You know how much space Luka has created right now just by forcing one mismatch. And by the way, he didn't force Enes Kanter on him. He forced a 2-time, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, one of the greatest defenders of his generation, in Rudy Gobert. But he is cooked right now. This game is over right now. I think it was Jamal Crawford who said, I know exactly what he's going to do. Everyone in the world knew exactly what he was going to do. We knew he was going to pull up for 3 on this matchup. He's not going to the basket. He's not risking getting fouled and the refs bailing him out. He's going to hit this. Look at the other 4 defenders. They're just like, oh, no. Oh, no. This is a human element of this. Okay? Feet out of position. Boom. Now, manipulate here. None of this manipulation is going to work if you are not a threat to shoot. None of it. You can fucking dribble. You can dance with the basketball all day. If they don't respect you to drive, they don't respect you to score, they don't respect you to shoot, it doesn't matter. And by the way, Luke is not a great defender. Luke is not a great shooter at all. He is not a great shooter. He is not a great shooter. He is a incredibly inaccurate and very inconsistent shooter. Why is he guarding him like this? Because he's shown enough times that he's willing to take it. He's always going to take it. If Scottie can become aggressive as fuck, come out and say, if you drop, I shoot. Drop, I shoot. I don't care if I have to take 35 threes. I don't care if Doug Smith and Toronto media roast me to shit. I don't care. I will take this shot if they give it to me. Scottie is not that far away as a shooter from Luka Doncic. Get real with it. Okay, you can point to all the highlights you want. Luka's not a great shooter. The numbers tell you that. Okay, but he pulls, he hits, season over. Okay, now take a look at this play. Okay, now this is an example of the Suns prior to making the trade for Kevin Durant. I want you to look at what happens when you don't create an advantage and you just keep spamming the movement. Okay, look at this. Okay, Chris Paul has an advantage right now. He could pass, in theory, to DeAndre Ayton. But guess who's in the way of that pass? It's Greek Freak. Paul sees this. So he's probably going to swing it back. That's exactly what he does. Quick, right? 0.5 basketball. That's what the Suns preach. That is what Monty preaches. Quick. Cal Bridges in the corner. Pump fake. Get past PJ Tucker. Force the defender to come up. Find the gap. Crowder. Why is Paul open? Not a great shooter. He's not a great shooter. It's as simple as that. This is elite basketball movement. This is perfect 0.5 basketball with the wrong personnel. Change one variable of this. Take Chris Paul out of it and put Steph Curry on the court. This shot would have been open. The shot for Crowder would have been open if Paul was not Paul and Paul was Steph Curry. Because there's no way Steph Curry's this open. And if you can't be left open, that means somebody's more open. That's the whole point I want to make with this, right? And now Greek Freak comes out. Paul's going to find, again, swing. Now, you consider this great basketball. I consider this flawed basketball because ultimately, you're still forced. And this is great defense, too, just an FYI. Like, this would have worked on a defense that wasn't as good as the Bucks. But move, right? Until you find DeAndre Ayton for a layup. So this entire play, bro, what? CP3 is a good shooter. He's not a good three-point shooter. He's not a high-volume three-point shooter, and that's what I mean. He's not killing you from there. 2 points and 3 points, the element of this matters, okay? Chris Paul is a great mid-range shooter. He's a good pull-up shooter. He's not a great three-point shooter. I'm sorry, he's not. I mean, I can confirm the numbers on this just so I can double check I'm not losing my mind here. But I don't think he's a high-volume three-point shooter. I don't think he's a great three-point shooter. Hang on, let me just check this. His three-point shooting percentage is 36.9%. That's not great. His three-point shooting volume per game, hold on, let's not use per game. Let's use percentage. So, the year in question, he was a 35% 38.8% three-point shooter. That's not great. The next year, he was 36.5. That's not great. The next year, at 35 years old, on 5.8 attempts per 100 possessions, if I compare that to Steph Curry at what, 14, 15 attempts per 100 possessions, this is not even close. He's not one of the best three-point shooters at his position. In his prime, he took 7 threes a game. You consider that great? Do you consider, like, I'm asking a question. Do you think that's great? In his prime, how many threes did Klay Thompson take in his prime? Per game, Klay Thompson, 2018, 2019, took 10 a game and hit it at 40%. The year before that, he took 9 a game and hit it at 44%. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that you're going under a screen on Chris Paul. Like, please understand, I'm not talking about him like he's DeMar DeRozan, but he is not anyone's definition of a great three-point shooter. He's very much average. You're comparing CP3 to the great. Okay, compare him to Kyle Lowry. Is he a better three-point shooter than Kyle Lowry? Is he a better three-point shooter than... Is he a higher volume? Is he a more dangerous three-point shooter than Fred VanVleet? Fred VanVleet can launch on high volume. He can launch a little bit deeper, right? Like, you got to look at this. Like, he's not a great three-point shooter. I'm sorry, he's not. He's honestly, the 39% surprised me there. So this is good for me to also check my numbers here. If I had to estimate, I would have estimated that he was a 35% career three-point shooter, 36%. And on his career, he's 36.9. So it's better than I thought he was. But 36.9 is like, that's like, he's just not that great, man. Well, K-Lau's pull-up game was lethal. I agree. Actually, Rob, worth checking, I think. How would Paul compare to Lowry? I think he's probably similar. Okay, cool. Let's just let's check that for 1 second and we get out of here. But 1 second here. I'll pull it up. Let's check. Okay. So let's look on their careers first. I mean, in fairness, Kyle Lowry came in as a bench player, and Paul's career is obviously way better. Chris Paul's career is like light years better. But per game, let's check. So where are we at here? So 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. Lowry on his career, 8.3. Paul on his career, 5.5. 3-point percentage, 36.8 versus 36.9. It just comes down to volume, man. But if we look at Kyle Lowry's peak, because I just want to point out, Kyle Lowry could not shoot at all in Memphis. He was a terrible shooter for the first few years. But when he started shooting, and that's why those percentages are very deceptive. When Kyle Lowry was at his absolute best, hang on 1 second. Let me pull this up here because I'm on another screen. Give me 1 sec. When K-Low was at his absolute best, he was a much better shooter and he forced way more pull. Hang on. Take a look at this. So those first, let's cut that out because that's 10 games. Those first, let's say 3 years, right? We're talking about a 26% three-point shooter. That's who Kyle Lowry was. He was still a good player. He was just a 26% three-point shooter. When he added the deep ball, right, it was curtains for the NBA. So in 2016 to 2013, 14, he was at per game 6.3 per game at 38%. Then at his peak three-point shooting volume, he was at 8 a game at 35.2%. Then he was at 7 in 2020, 2021. So 2 years after Kawhi, 46 games played. He was nearly 40% on 7 attempts. This is not a three-point shooter that I would leave in a million years. He is definitely a better three-point shooter than Chris Paul. And again, this is where the numbers are lying. You know what I mean? Because you could take the percentages. Let's see how Chris Paul's evolution as a 3-point shooter. Hold on. Who came in, he could kind of shoot. Like Chris Paul was a better shooter at Wake Forest, I think. Okay, let's see here. So yeah, Chris Paul by year 2 was already 35%. Like he's been this way. You know what I mean? But if you talk prime, Lowry took more threes per 100 possessions, and he made more threes per 100 possessions. So I'll give the major edge to Kyle Lowry. And by the way, I don't even think Lowry was like some great 3-point shooter. He was good, and that's where the level. When I say there's levels to this, right? Okay, so get this out of here. Lowry peak shooting year was 100% 2016, 2017. 41% on 8 attempts in his prime year, 16, 17. Cool. Imagine if Denver had a better offensive coach, they would be a nightmare for the league with MPJ's horizontal spacing and Gordon's vertical spacing with Jokic. Wow. I mean, they did win a championship in their defense. I think Denver's entire team is very overrated. I think Jokic becomes somewhat underrated in all of this. But anyway, let me know if y'all like this video. I was very excited about it. Maybe it's not as great as I thought it was. Maybe it's not as revolutionary. Maybe y'all knew all of this. Let me know in the comments below if you got a kick out of this, if it was something to think about, if this was something you'd heard before, if it's original. I have no idea. I've heard a lot about Steph's shooting gravity. I've never really thought about it in a deeper way than that. But last night, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, and we started talking about what all of this even means. And these are the kind of thoughts that came out of it. So I hope y'all like it. It's not. I don't think it's a clickbaity title at all. Solving basketball. It is that simple, isn't it? Right. We have seen superstars throughout the ages dominate in various ways. Right. We've seen Oscar. We've seen Magic. We've seen Bird. We've seen Kareem. We've seen Hakeem, Wilt, Bill Russell. Right. What are all of these people doing? They're manipulating time and space. When Bill Russell can sprint the basketball up in 4 dribbles and make quick passes, he's shrinking time and space. This is really what it comes down to, right? When Bill Russell was the ultimate big who could run the court, right? When a Wilt Chamberlain is unstoppable one-on-one, when the Big Dipper is, putting a shoulder into you and scoring 50 points, and that's gravity, right? When Shaquille O'Neal catches the basketball, that's gravity. When Kawhi Leonard catches the ball at the pinch post, that's gravity. When Michael Jordan attacks the rim, that's gravity. I'm seeing gravity when I'm looking at it, right? I'm looking at the floor sinking around these superstars that in a way it does not sink around non-superstars. And when I say non-superstars, I mean guys like CJ McCollum, right? You put up the numbers all you want. You have superstar numbers, but you're not having superstar impact. And the superstar impact is always when you think about a player hitting a game winner, look at the eyes of the other players. Look at how much attention is on that player, because that attention is fear. That's what it is. That's fear. That's respect, right? And they say, what's the biggest gap between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, right? What is the biggest gap between these two players, right? Fear, revere. You can revere one, to borrow from Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp. You can revere one, but you fear the other, right? Ray Allen, Kobe Bryant. Vince Carter, Kobe Bryant. You revere one, you respect them, you understand they're good. There's a fear factor with the other one. That fear is a very human thing. When you face Steph Curry, imagine you're a point guard in the NBA and your next matchup is Steph Curry. There's fear. It's very real. You don't want to be the defender that he hangs 55, 80 points on. Scoring is basketball. Basketball is scoring. There's no way to separate these two. In history of the basketball and in history of basketball played across continents in every single league, there's only one thing that has always held true. The team that scores more points wins the game. Every time, undefeated. So when we're looking at flex offense, triangle offense, we're looking at box and ones, different zones, man to man. We're looking at, the Warriors motion offense. We're looking at, players isolating. What are we really talking about? We're talking about different ways to score. We're talking about defense. We're talking about different ways of stopping people from scoring. So when Scottie Barnes says basketball is really simple, it's probably because intuitively He understands all of this. Okay. SP saying you should bring this up on Player's Choice. No, I should not. It's interesting. It's interesting, but how does it apply to Scottie? Is surrounding him with shooters the answer? That's a great question. No, it's not about surrounding him with shooters. So right now, what the Raptors have done, to just take 2 minutes to just sum this up from a Raptors perspective, how does this apply to the Toronto Raptors? Look at the pieces now you've put around Scottie, right? You've got Emmanuel Quickly. What does Emmanuel Quickly do better than most people in the NBA? He shoots great from three. He is a threat from three. Emmanuel Quickly would not be open in that corner. The same corner that Chris Paul was open, IQ would not be open in that corner. I guarantee you that much. He is a high volume, deep 3-point shooter. He's not a player that you ignore. He's read on the scouting report every single time. You do not ignore this guy. Immediately, you have positive synergy in a Scottie Barnes pick and roll. Immediately, it stresses the defense when you have a guy like Scottie who can handle the ball, the way that he can, who can drive the way that he can, if he can get a little bit better at it, who can shoot a little bit, right? And he's got big, broad shoulders and he's a good screener. Pair that with a Emmanuel Quickly, you get a very weird version of Draymond and Steph Curry pick and roll, right? Now, neither player is the other. I get it. Scottie's a better player than Emmanuel Quickly. Steph's a better player than Draymond. I get all of that. I'm just saying that play type works for the same reason, is that one player has shooting gravity, the other one has passing gravity and can set screens. RJ Barrett is quick attacks, right? And he has gravity as well. RJ Barrett has tremendous gravity as a driver. It's just not as dynamic and as dominant because he's not as fast as the best drivers. Like when we think about a Giannis, he covers space better than RJ Barrett. He's not the best finisher. He got way better as a finisher. So you've put two positive spacing elements around. And if RJ can continue to hit the three, he's also very positive. And because defenses have to close out on him, so now all of this motion around Scottie, all you're hoping to do is expand the gaps in which he's working. So yes, putting motion and shooting around a downhill driver with long strides like Scottie Barnes is a genius bet on upside. But Scottie himself needs to be a positive contributor to that spacing by upping his percentages and upping his volume. He also needs to become a much better, more assertive scorer, a guy who is willing to punish quickly and punish relentlessly if a defense is going to cheat off of him and not focus on him. And that will help everybody. Basketball is a very give and take sort of situation. Every single time, that a player is helping Scottie with the spacing, they're also helping themselves. Because if you're going to space correctly for him and he is able to collapse the defense, you're the one who's going to benefit with an open three over and over. Gary Trent, not great. Couldn't pass. Not a great passer. Not a great driver. Not a great finisher. So he could just do one thing. And that one thing is just, it's not that hard to stop. I mean, he scored a bunch of points. He scored buckets and buckets and buckets as a Raptor. But it doesn't mean that he was helping your spacing nearly as much as a player who could have driven in that situation. RJ Barrett helps your spacing more than Gary Trent Jr. did, in my opinion. Emmanuel Quickly helps your spacing more, in my opinion, than Fred VanVleet did. In my opinion, again, I'll 100% concede right now, Fred's the better player right now. But by next year, maybe Emmanuel Quickly clips him because of the defense and the playmaking and the overall basketball IQ and stuff like that. But the fact that IQ can drive, the fact that he's going to get better at driving, I don't think y'all are ready for how good Emmanuel Quickly is about to be too. And then you add in the variables that the Raptors have added, all these rookies, and they're all positive spacing. Everything is positive for spacing. Jonathan Mobo is positive for spacing. He's a big who runs the court. Like he's a big who can run, pass, and shoot. Theory shoot. Yuri Shamshay is good for spacing. He's a big who charges the rim. He is great for spacing. He can also pass. He can also shoot. If Christian Koloko comes back, he's excellent for spacing. He's also great for defensive spacing because he takes away space. Everything the Raptors are doing right now is predicated on time and space. I hope this video helped y'all. Thank you so much for the super chats to both of you. Dylan Shoot with the super chat here. Do you think Scottie will be asked to mostly guard the other team's best player this year? Or will he be a rover help defender to save his legs for offense? Good question, Dylan. I'm not sure. I think if I had to make an educated guess, that he's going to be tasked with being more of a rover and putting RJ Barrett more into the primary. Now, I'm hoping that with Jakob Poeltl back, right, with Scottie roving, with hopefully some sort of return back to good defender status for guys like Bruce Brown and Emmanuel Quickly, I think RJ can be competent in this regard. He's pesky. He's a big athlete. He can offer a little bit of deterrence, a little bit of rim pressure, a little bit of length, right? So, sorry, not rim pressure, ball pressure. So, I think it's just enough, right? It's just enough. And if it's not going to be RJ, then yeah, it's going to have to be Scottie. Scottie guarding the other team's best defender. And hopefully his conditioning is at a level right now. Or maybe what I would do potentially is I would maybe save Scottie for the fourth quarter, right? I don't necessarily even think point of attack is really his jam, but if you're talking about a guy like Jason Tatum, he is absolutely your best option. When you talk about Luka Doncic, he's your best option. You talk about Anthony Edwards, I don't think you have an option to guard Anthony Edwards, frankly. But are you talking about LeBron James, Kevin Durant? You're talking about like the vast majority of the best players in this league. He's your best option, right? He did a good job against Jokic. I think he held Jokic to 2 points in the fourth quarter. The idea that Scottie Barnes, and let me just close on versatility, right? Just to keep this an hour and a half guaranteed. Versatility is the most understudied and underrated part of basketball, partially because it was so uncommon to have players who were as versatile as some of the players we see today. But a player like Jason Tatum is infinitely more valuable than a player like Jaylen Brown. Infinitely more valuable. When I say infinitely more, I mean infinitely more valuable. He guards more places on the court. He's more effective from different places on the court. He's a more efficient scorer than from different places on the court. You can eye test me all you want. You can say Jaylen Brown looks like the better player, scores like the better player, he won Finals MVP. I don't care. I don't care. The space equation is absolutely, space and time is absolutely in favor of Jason Tatum. Every time. When you are versatile, when you are a player who can play 4 or 5 positions offensively, when you're a player who can initiate from the top, initiate from the break, initiate from the corners, initiate from the post, you are a problem everywhere. But what if you're a player who doesn't function well with their back to the basket? Well, now there's something you can't do. I can take that away from you, right? I don't have to take it away from you because you can't do it. So you take it away from yourself, right? What if you're a player who's just not a good passer? Like Jaylen Brown, not a great passer. So that's something I can play you to do. I can play you against your strengths, right? What if you're a guy who doesn't finish well around the rim, like a Fred VanVleet? Now that's what Fred VanVleet never understood about his bet on himself, equation, is that teams were daring him to drive. They pull him off the line, right? Because he's a better shooter. He gets his head gassed up because they're like, oh wow, they're really respecting me on the line. Yeah, because you can't do anything else. You can't do anything else. You can drive and drive and drive and kill your body. But that's it. That you're a pull-up merchant. You're a pull-up 3 merchant. That's it. Come off the screen, pull up, dribble, pull up. That's it. Anything beyond that, anything beyond inside the 3-point line, Fred VanVleet was ineffective, inefficient relative to league average percentages. It's the same thing with Pascal Siakam. It's the inverted thing with Pascal Siakam. This is why it took so many issues with Pascal Siakam. Go look at Pascal Siakam play basketball. Really, really study it. The Raptors takes. Go look at the best games with the Raptors, etc. Where is the defense centering on the court? Are they flooding off their guy? Are they cheating off the corners? Are they losing their minds because he's across the half court line? No. They are doing the same thing to him that they're doing to Scottie Barnes, which is they're daring him to shoot. He's just a better ball handler, so he's able, and he's like a little burstier with the ball in his prime, so he's able to get around those matchups. My point is, he's not helping very much because when you can't shoot, right, you're not the greatest mapper of the court. And I'm not saying Pascal Siakam wasn't a good passer. He's a good passer for his size. He's a very good passer for his size. Not a great passer though. Not a great decision maker. Not always great at spotting those advantages early. Not always great at throwing those passes on target. So it just comes down to that, right? How about starting Davion for point of attack defense? Holy shit. We just talked about spacing for an hour and a half, and now you're talking about starting Davion Mitchell. I appreciate it. No, I don't think so. I wouldn't. Mafio, someone who don't pass the ball like Cam Thomas. Who do you think has the best gravity that's not a star? Not a star, but tremendous gravity. Can I mention someone who's not like, it's probably going to be a really great movement shooter. So there's this guy Sam Merrill and Isaiah Joe. Those two players, defenses really panic, like really panic when they get the basketball, and you can see it. Now, I'm just talking shooting gravity for the most part. Like, obviously, these guys don't extend the same gravity more into the thing. Bam saying Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams is a star. He is a star. You may not think of him as all-star, whatever. Duncan Robinson? I don't think so. No. I mean, Duncan has a lot of gravity. Tyler Hero has a tremendous amount of gravity as well. I think he's very, very good, and he's not a star at all. Who else? Who else? Again, it's a simple equation. Someone who finishes well in the paint, someone who can dribble, someone who's athletic, someone who can shoot high percentages on high volume above the break. That's or beyond the 3-point line. Largely above the break, not so much the corners. It's really when you can attack from the center of the court that you really, really put the maximum stress. Anthony Simons is a good example of someone who has a ton of gravity. Yes. I mean, Jalen Williams, Kason Wallace. No, not Kason. But that brings me to my, I'm going to be interviewing Eric, and he's Kason's trainer next week. So that's going to be a fun thing. I love Kason Wallace. One of my favorite rookies last year, was one of my favorite players going into the draft cycle. Was really hoping the Raptors would get him. But yeah. Anyways, talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Make sure to hit like on this video, and I hope that it was a good one. Michael Porter Jr. That's a great example. Yes, Michael Porter Jr. is a great example. I don't know why I went to Sam Merrill. Michael Porter Jr. has tremendous amount of gravity. You know, another thing that really impacts gravity is previous star status. You know, like someone who is just a big name, a lot of big moments, maybe. So I'm thinking about a guy like Klay Thompson, actually. Klay Thompson has quite a bit of gravity even right now, and he is not the same shooter that he was. Klay has a lot of gravity. There's no solving basketball. Different era, different styles, like the show and the idea. You need to go back to what I said about Japanese, bro. That was some Japanese right there. Shout outs to Big Ox for turning me on to that word. All right, peace.